Well, hi everybody. What? Hold on 1 second, please. Yeah? Oh, you can't? Well, yeah. No, I understand, and everybody's going to miss you, but that's okay. I'll tell them, Betty. Don't worry about it. Oh, honey, it's going to be okay. Don't you worry. Next week, back in shape. Thanks, dear. Well, that was Betty, and she is not going to be able to be with us on this live streaming. I'm really sorry about that, but she's sorry about it. But as you know, it was the last day of school just this past week, and she's got a few cool things she's been doing, just like some of you. And so it's not going to be as much fun without Betty. But we're going to keep on plugging along. And now what we're talking about is ongoing story of Ezra. And we're even going to get to know a little bit about some archangels. So let's see what we've got. Well, you can remember in the last chapter, that's last week, that after the big conference, there was a big party. Well, in those days, there were so many battles and wars that every now and then when there was a little peace, of course, they had a big party. Ezra, as you may recall, didn't always have a perfect life, nor did he always have peace. And so we once again must look at some of his bad times. Ezra was a captain in Media. There are different names for it. He was captive there. And during the reign of Artaxerxes, remember him? Artaxerxes? Yeah? Who was the king of Persia, as you may remember. Well, it was during this time that the Lord had very special words for him. The Lord said, "Go to my people and tell them of all the bad things they are doing and how they've been sinning against me. Also, tell them that I'm really becoming more upset about them worshiping those dumb idols. Tell them that they have forgotten who got them out of Egypt and gave them the promised land." Well, God was still a bit troubled by what some of the Israelites said to him and to Moses when they were in the desert. And they complained that they would rather be slaves in Egypt than free men and women in the desert. Well, once again, God had a familiar sentence for Ezra to give to the disobedient Israelites. "Didn't I promise that I would be your God and that you would be my people?" Well, in fact, God was so put out with them that he added, "I have rejected your feasts, your new moons, and your baby boy ceremonies. I sent you the prophets to warn you, but you killed them, so I am going to hold you accountable." Well, I think you've figured out that God gave Ezra a very difficult message that he needed to take to the people. I know that in the Old Testament, we heard many times from God that he was disappointed with how his chosen people were treating him. But sometimes it makes us also remember that it's our job to pass on to our children God's teachings. Some people today seem to be afraid to do that, but God kept on sending prophets to remind everyone of what he had done for the people and what they had apparently forgotten. Hold on a minute. What's that, Betty? That's right, I know. Betty, of course, listens to her parents and she listens to God. So I just want you to know that when I said that, I know that Betty listens to God and to her parents. Okay? Well, prophets are supposed to keep on reminding us of the things that we should be doing. But sometimes it gets lonely telling people what God's already told us. So God promised Ezra that he would send along some helpers. He'd send along Isaiah and Jeremiah. Remember? Heard about them? God also wanted Ezra to explain how much better people's lives would be if only they would listen to God. And that he had good people trying to explain the fact that God loved them, but their bad behavior kept getting them into more trouble. So Ezra pointed out that while he was on Mount Horeb, he was given wonderful information that he now needed to share with God's people. After he had tried to get them to listen, he went on to tell them that while he was on Mount Horeb, he had seen a big crowd, too many even to count, and that they were singing some really, really good hymns. But he told them that in the very middle of the crowd, he saw a very tall young man, and that this man was putting crowns on the heads of people. So Ezra was kind of puzzled by that. Here are all these people dressed a little differently, tall man, crowns, very much in the middle, putting crowns on their heads. So Ezra, being very puzzled, he asked an angel who was there who this man was, because he was also handing out palms like Christians do on Palm Sunday. Well, the angel was happy to tell Ezra who this was. He said that the people were those who had laid aside their regular clothes that were only worn in this world, and that they were now wearing the clothes that they'd be wearing in heaven. Hey, what do you think about that, folks? Betty, one day you know what's going to happen, right? Yeah, you get to wear some new clothes, and guess what? Mom didn't even have to take you to Target to get them. So that meant that they would be able to wear these clothes, but these clothes would be the clothes that they would wear in heaven. And they were getting a crown and palms because they were doing everything God had told them to do. This was good for Ezra. He was tired of seeing people didn't do what they were told to do. So then the angel told Ezra that the tall man in the middle, well, that's the Son of Man. And the people had figured that out while living in the world because they kept on listening to what God had to say to them. Well, sir, Ezra was so blown away by this that all he could do was start praising God. The angel then told Ezra to go and tell the people all about the really amazing things that God showed him on Mount Horeb. Betty, do you ever get excited when you start praising God? What do you say? You say, praise the Lord. Hallelujah. Yay, God. Well, do you ever feel, though, as if people don't listen to you? I know Betty does sometimes. You know, sometimes adults don't always listen carefully to children. And I know that it's true that children don't always listen to adults. And I know it's even more true that men and women and children don't always listen to God. Well, the prophets felt like nobody listened to them. But they kept on coming, and here is our friend Ezra one more time, ready to share information. But he was given some information while he was trying to take a nap. Now, I'm not really good at taking naps, I have to tell you that. I've even stood next to people to watch so I could get a lesson in napping. I don't know how to nap. I watch people, I look at them, they look like they know what they're doing, but I don't know how to take a nap. So maybe someday God will let me nap. But you know what happened is our friend Ezra was trying to take a nap. And since God could get his attention because there wasn't anything else going around, well, guess what? He really received some interesting information. So Ezra was taking his nap, and he was just thinking about Jerusalem and the Jewish people who were living in Babylon. So when he was there lying and thinking and praying, he asked God to go over with him everything in creation, you know. When God created everything, including Adam and Eve, and had them living in paradise in the garden. Ezra then pointed out that God had only asked one thing of Adam and Eve, and Ezra says to God, they couldn't even listen to that. They disobeyed. Well, Ezra then pointed out that God asked that one thing, didn't he? Remember one thing, folks? Okay. Well, Ezra wanted to say how bad it was that sin came into the world, and that people like Noah listened to God, but most didn't. Ezra's mind then went to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's good. Shows Ezra's thinking. Next, his mind went to Egypt. Then it went to the 10 Commandments and the desert. And he thought about the fact that since Adam and Eve had sinned and brought sin into God's creation by listening to the devil, that every generation afterwards kept on sinning. But Ezra kept on thinking and daydreaming, and he thought about King David, whom God told to build a city with a temple. And the people kept on acting like David did by not obeying God. But now Ezra had an amazing thought. Think about this. He says, if the people who follow God have caused many problems by their bad behavior and their bad decisions, maybe the people in Babylon are living better lives, and maybe that's why, at that point, the Babylonians have captured God's chosen people. Do you ever feel that way? When it looks to you like the people who are supposed to be the good people are losing? And the people look like the bad people seem to be winning? Well, so Ezra, who was also called Salathiel, kept thinking and praying and trying to nap. He thought about the fact that for 30 years he had seen lots of evil things being done by God's chosen people. And it made him wonder if maybe God had some other chosen people who actually acted like they appreciate the fact that God had chosen them. So, the archangel who had been sent, and his name is Uriel, actually had an answer. He said to Ezra, you are at a loss to explain this world? So do you really think you can understand God? Well, Ezra said to Uriel that he really thought that he could understand something about the Most High God. Well then, Uriel looks at Ezra and he says, I'll tell you what. Tell you what I'm going to do. I've been sent to give you 3 illustrations. And if you can explain any one of them to me, I will answer your questions about God and the world he created that doesn't pay any attention to him. Ezra was really excited. Here was an angel speaking to him. And this angel was willing to explain a few things to Ezra. So what do you think, Betty? Every now and then, don't you wish an angel would come and speak to you and me and tell us the way things should be? But no, we have to keep waiting, wondering, right? But at least Ezra was listening. And I'll bet you in your school, Betty, not everybody always listens all of the time. But then again, I saw your grade card, sweetheart. Well done. Well, the first thing the Archangel Uriel said was pretty tricky. He said, here goes. Weigh for me a pound of fire, or measure for me a bushel of wind, or call back a day that's already passed. I mean, this is sort of sounding like a Beatles song, right? Yesterday. No, you can't bring back yesterday. So, what would you say to Uriel if you were asked these 3 questions? Well, Ezra was shocked and told Uriel that no one alive could ever do that. Well, Uriel was pretty smart, and he went on to say to Ezra, well, just suppose that instead of what I just said, that I ask you how many dwellings there are in the heart of the sea, or how many streams of water there are in the ocean, or how many streams of water there are above the sea, or how many exits there are from the grave, or how many entrances there are into heaven. Would you have told me that you've never been snorkeling underwater? That you've never been underground in a casket? Or that you've never been up to heaven? So you see, Ezra, since you have seen fire and wind and yesterday and act like you don't understand, how do you think you can understand things that you've never seen or experienced? Besides, since you live in a broken, sinful world that you see all the time, what makes you think you can really understand things that you have never seen or experienced? Now, Betty, later on, what you're going to discover is that Jesus is going to say something very similar, and this is going to catch some people off guard, because Jesus is going to say something like this. Well, if you can't love the people you see, how is it that you propose that you're going to love God whom you don't see? Well, I don't think that Uriel would be a good angel to argue with, because he had lots of good answers to tough questions. So Ezra was so overwhelmed by what Uriel the archangel was saying that he fell over. I mean, flat down prostrate, and said, "It's better not to ever have been born than to have to deal with this sinful world." The wrong answer. That wasn't good enough for Uriel. Uriel then says to Ezra, "I went out to the woods and the trees had a plan." What do you think, Betty? Trees thinking trees? I don't know. They grow. Maybe they can think. The trees decided to go to war with the ocean so that there could be more trees and less water. And the ocean decided to go to war with the trees and to stop the trees from growing and to put more water to where the trees could be. But guess what? The fire came and it burned down the forest. And the ocean discovered that there were sand dunes and that the sand would not let the ocean enter the area at all. Think about that for a second, folks. Now, Ezra, Uriel says, which plan is right? Well, Ezra told Uriel that both plans were wrong. Yeah, and Uriel agreed. But Uriel then told Ezra that he needed to think a little more. Well, what about? I mean, Uriel's starting to really dig in with some questions, and Ezra is starting to look even more silly. So, why have you failed to answer your own question, Uriel says. Just like the land belongs to the trees and the ocean to the waves, so it is that people on earth can understand earthly things and not much else. Uriel went on to say, only those who live above the skies can understand the things above the skies. Ezra was not satisfied, and he told Uriel, I don't get it. I'm not asking about the distant heavens. I just want to know, why is it that God's chosen people act so badly and why they're so mistreated by so many other nations? I think Uriel must be a very patient angel, because after listening to Ezra's confused words, Uriel said, I think you get the idea that there's lots of evil, right? Evil's like bad seeds that are planted. And I'm here to tell you that not all of the evil plants have grown yet. Whoa. Now, if you had the bad freeze this year, folks, I think you found out that some of your things aren't growing too well. Well, the problem was Ezra wanted answers, and he wanted them right now. It's kind of like people who say, oh, Lord, make me patient, but make me patient right now. Uriel said, don't be in a greater hurry than God himself. What makes you think you deserve an immediate answer? Whoa. See what he's saying? I mean, Ezra might have been a prophet, but what made him think he was so important that he deserved to know everything? Well, then another archangel came along. This is called double teaming, I think. His name was Jeremiel. And he chimed in and said, God's in charge here, not you. God is measuring and weighing, and once he's weighed everything, then he will act when he is ready, Ezra. Well, here's my advice. Never argue with an angel, and especially never argue with an archangel, and especially never argue with two archangels. One of the funny things, though, that Jeremiel asked him was, if when a mother is ready to have her baby born, like right then, and if somebody said, nah, why don't you wait a few more days? Keep that baby there in your womb a little longer. Probably that mom would not respond by saying, oh, thank you. What a beautiful idea. So Ezra kind of chuckled, and he realized how silly that was. But he got the message. God is in charge of when things will happen, not us. But Ezra was a person with questions who wanted answers. So cautiously he asked, "Are there more years behind us than there are before us as to when life's going to get better around here?" In other words, Ezra was trying to find another way to ask about when life might improve and get better for God's chosen people. You like that sometimes, Betty, or are your friends ever like that? What I mean is, every now and then, do you ever find like parents don't always give you the answer that you're asking? One I love, I know you love this too, Betty, is when you ask a question to your parents and they say, "I'll think about it," right? You know what I'll think about it usually means, Betty, when parents say that? I better not tell you. Well, the archangel gave Ezra a vision. The vision was of a huge blazing fire, followed by lots of smoke, and then a dark rain cloud with very heavy storm. And when that passed, there were a few raindrops left. You might want to remember B.J. Thomas, everybody. He died this week. He's the one who gave us the song "Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head." Just an aside. So, there were the raindrops. The angel said, "Look at it this way. The rain shower filled a much bigger space than the raindrops, and the fire filled out more space than the smoke." Now, here's the deal. The past is much, much longer in time than what will happen in the future. So the future's a little bit shorter than the past. Well, that wasn't good enough. Of course, Ezra kept trying to pry more information out of the angel. So he said, "Excuse me, Mr. Angel, do you think I will live long enough to see all the good stuff? Because I sure have seen more than enough of the bad stuff." Well, Ezra was not too thrilled with the answer, because the angel told him, "That's not my story to tell. After all, you got to figure this one out, Ezra. I'm in sales, not management." So, in the next chapter, we're going to find out what Ezra was finally able to learn. But I got to tell you, sometimes if you just look at the way God created us, I want you to notice 2 ears, 1 mouth. Why do some people act like they have 2 mouths and 1 ear? That's when we get in trouble. So, God's given us 2 ears, so let's spend more time listening to Him and less time trying to come up with a way of debating Him. And in the meantime, I've got a little advice for you. Betty, got this? Let's see if everybody out here gets it too. If you decide to take a nap today and God gives you a vision and an angel shows up, my advice to you is listen to the angel. And don't try to argue or debate an angel. Because you know what? You'll find out. You'll always lose. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. And I'm hoping you're as excited as I am about figuring out what happens to our friend Ezra in the next chapter.